It's clear to me that marketers aren't informed how measurement could actually help them.
Welcome to Branching Out by Bonsai, the podcast where marketing gets measured, myths get busted, and acronyms get explained. No filler, just the good stuff. Let's get into it.
It's clear to me that marketers aren't informed how measurement could actually help them. And you can see it in every type of marketing reporting and analytics tool that's being made available to marketers. Let me explain. So recently, and I guess probably Google soon, they're starting to put incremental conversion in their ad platform reporting. So in the past, you had your ad data, you had your conversion data, and now that people are starting to talk about incremental conversions, there's now also giving some advertisers the ability to track that and see that in their ads reports, which sounds great. And the industry is telling marketers this is great. When I talk to people about their opportunities to come and utilize Bonsai, and we talk about the problems and issues that they're facing on their marketing teams before they do that, people only ever really talk about how they can get better attribution, more insight into how their marketing is driving sales and customers, more tracking or modeling or data to show, hey, marketing is driving the business. And that's the problem, is that we have somehow taught and trained marketers to think that if they had more data and more evidence of marketing's impact, that would be good for marketers. That would help marketing teams in their organizations, that would give them more authority, bigger budgets, and so on. That if only they had more data on how their marketing was working. And that's how incremental conversions have been framed. It's been framed as more data, better quality, premium insight. And this is really a shame because that's completely wrong on both fronts. As marketers, the value of marketing measurement and analytics and attribution isn't to give you insight into more of marketing's impact. And incremental conversions are not a fancy addition, a special feature of marketing measurement. Yeah, let me explain both. What is an incremental conversion? To the outside normal world, that would just be what they would call a conversion. So an incremental conversion means your business had sales before you ran marketing. So you maybe sold 10 pairs of shoes a day. Your company starts marketing and advertising, and then at some point you don't just sell 10 pairs of shoes a day. You, let's say, sell 15 pairs of shoes a day. The difference in how many sales you used to have to new number of sales you have today, that's essentially the lift. That's the change. That's the increase in business. We've come up with this term incremental. But if we were not inundated with these terms and this best practice dialogue that exists across the industry, and you were just an outside observer from your operator's perspective, the C-suite's perspective, maybe your finance person's perspective, really anybody who doesn't deal with marketing every day, they would have no problem understanding what happened after you guys started marketing. You had 10 sales a day, now you've got 15 sales a day. Instantly, they would understand that marketing has been driving 5 new sales a day. And to be clear, the business has to have new sales, new customers, in order for there to be an impact from marketing at all. It's simply true that if the business had sold 10 shoes a day before marketing, they hire a director of marketing and they start running advertising online and in every which channel and form that they want. And they spend a lot of money, that if at the end of the day down the road, they're still selling 10 pairs of shoes a day, they were doing that before they had ads. So they have no new revenue coming in and they have this additional expense, which is marketing. There's just no other way to say it. That would be a net negative on the business. Now you could say the people are not going to buy yet, and years later down the road, the marketing will eventually drive sales. And that's fine. Most sophisticated businesses, and I guess people outside of marketing, have been thinking about these long-term effects of anything you're doing in business for a while. I think marketers might be under the impression that they came up with this idea of long-term forecasting or lifetime value modeling or other really sophisticated things you can do. But the reality is they haven't. This is a way that people should and do think about their businesses. Yeah. If you don't know, get familiar with a 10Q report from a publicly traded company, or get familiar with really many number of resources. But anyway, sorry, I'm way off topic. The point is that you can extend this analogy to however far you want into the future, and I will do that for you. Let's say you give credit to any day in the future. At some point, if you got 12 sales a day as opposed to 10, there you go. You could argue and advocate that the marketing program had a long-term impact. It had an impact on growing the business. There were new sales at some point. But bottom line, whether it's short-term, mid-term, or long-term, if that's not changing, there is no impact of marketing. And it is just demonstrably true that it's a net negative to the business. And a smaller business is what results when you have revenues that don't change, or new growth that doesn't come in, and more expenses that go out the door. We often use marketing analytics and marketing attribution to convince or coerce or try to influence a finance team to increase the marketing budget that a team has for the next period. I don't think there's any doubt that marketers do better when they have a bigger budget. They can try more channels, they can hire more staff, they can run more ads. It's really all good news with respect to the amount of impact marketing can have. And this isn't new to marketing or unique to marketing. And marketers should be advocating for bigger budgets. And people who want to help marketers should be helping them get bigger budgets. Yeah, I think this idea that marketing measurements goal is not to show more credit for marketing. When you say that today, marketers think that you must be anti-marketing, or you must be trying to reduce the budgets and impact that marketers get. It couldn't be further from the case. Let me continue to explain. Take us back to that world where we've been doing marketing, but we didn't get the additional sales. Or as marketers, I've been trained to think of them, the incremental conversions. If your advertising dollars are going out the door and there's no incremental conversions, you had a certain amount of revenue before, you have the same amount of revenue after, you had no marketing expense before, and you have marketing expense after. The company funds the next year's budgets with not just like the revenue they have to pay to run the company, including marketing. And so you only get to run the budgets next year based on essentially the money that you have going into next year. And it's the difference between those two numbers, right? So revenue staying the same and expenses going up means there's less available the next period. If there's less available for the company the next period, you might have an organization that's finance is only approving you to get 10% of the company's revenue to be allocated to that marketing budget line. And you might argue that's not nearly a high enough percentage, and a much more appropriate percentage would be a bigger number, and that would be in the best interest of the company. And as a marketing analytics professional or a CMO or really anybody who's advocating for marketers, you might be right. But you have to hold the phone here. Right now, you've got a smaller amount of money to allocate to anything next year, including marketing. So let's just hypothetically say that you are taking credit for more of the sales of the company. You're able to track more conversions, or ad platform reporting is able to put higher numbers in front of you and your team, which you can take to leadership. Or you hire a third party with a lot of smart people, PhDs, statisticians, beautiful UIs and UXs, incredible data science going on behind the scenes that has p-values and confidence intervals and two-tailed t-tests and all the wonderful things that you see in science and physics and really the real sciences, right? All of that data presented in a way that shows that, hey, look how much marketing is impacting these 10 sales a day. If the 10 sales a day doesn't go to more than 10 sales a day, you might be able to create a world where marketing looks like it somehow had an effect on all the 10 sales, even though that number didn't go up. And maybe that is a convincing argument. And maybe someone in finance says, you're right, 10% of revenue for the marketing budget isn't enough. And we think marketing is doing a great job because, my gosh, look how much data you've given me on how many things marketing is doing to drive these 10 sales. So here you go. Let's increase the percentage of available capital that you'll get in marketing. Let's give you 20% of the revenue for next year. Sorry, let's just say, let's give you 10% of what's available to allocate to marketing. We had 10% of available capital before going to marketing, and now let's take that number up to 20%. So say you've won the argument. Here's the problem. The marketing budget is probably not actually going up. Remember, what goes into the fund next year is the difference between that top number, the revenue, and then whatever the company's investing to run the company, including running marketing. So if before it was 10 sales a day and no marketing at all, there was some good difference there between the revenue and what the company was running to run the company. And so there's all this money in between. 10% of that difference could be a decent amount of money. If we've added in all this marketing expense and that number at the top hasn't gone up, we have this smaller bar. And this smaller bar, yes, you might move the percentage of what's left from 10 to 20, but notice how 10% of this number might be bigger than 20% of this smaller baseline number. So here's ultimately the takeaway. We're spending all our time and all the messaging, and we're training marketers to think that what they need is more evidence, regardless of what the 10 changes, whether or not the 10 sales stays 10 sales a day or 10 sales goes to 20 sales or 6 sales or whatever happens at the top line is being treated as independent of what marketing is doing. And really what marketing should be focused on is identifying ways to have value creation attributed to what they do. And this is tragic. This ultimately doesn't grow marketing budgets. Might grow marketing budgets in the very short term, next quarter's budget, maybe next month's budget, maybe it gets you that extra hire. But long term, there's no getting away from the math. The math says you're going to lose budget, you're going to lose ability to do what you're trying to do, you're going to have a smaller team, everything is going to go the wrong direction. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you're going to end up cycling through. And then a company that has less capital is often now forced into harder decisions, which unfortunately tend to not go the smart direction. Incremental conversions. These aren't nice to have. The idea is that's all you have. Everything else that happens that's not incremental is a total loss. So even if you have only decent data and some proof points of the lift, right? The ability to say, hey, when our marketing went from, we came in with a company with 10 sales a day and we ran marketing and we were able to get that number up to 11 sales, right? That might not sound like a lot. It might not sound as nice as, oh, we're able to attribute 8 of the 10 sales to marketing, but moving the needle from that 10 to 11 a day, that increased the revenue of the company 10%, right? There's that much more capital. And so that one sale pointed correctly, or at least decently, reasonably accurately towards the different things you're doing. Even if that only shows that like part of your marketing was working, if you can feel good that you have that one sale attributed to the right place or identified the couple channels that have really impacted it, you've made huge headway on growing your marketing budget in totality next year. And frankly, staying and being successful and getting promoted and hiring bigger teams and all the great things that you want to do in marketing. You're getting less credit as a number, as a size, but it's more precise. And the reason is because when you are spending more money or you invest into the things that actually improve something, that's what makes that number, that 10 to 11, that takes that 11 and then turns that into 12, right? And then 13 and 14, 15, 20 and onward. Because when the reality of what's working is married to what you're actually allocating more into, guess what? At the top of the business, stuff actually happens. Good stuff comes out the top. A lot of teams, for as many questions as I get on how our tools or how does your tool show more marketing attribution or more marketing impact, for as many questions as I get about that, unfortunately, I have probably the equivalent amount of conversations with marketers who it is very clear that they've been working in the space for a long time, some of them, in digital ads, in strategy, at marketing and media agencies, on brands, sometimes CMO all the way down to practitioner level. People have been doing this now a long time, and they've mastered like how many data points there are and what ad platform reports what and all the specifics. But sadly, they've been in the cycle and they've not been a part of teams where the 10 sales a day turned into 12 sales a day. They've been on a lot more situations in teams where the 10 sales a day just keeps staying the 10 sales a day. And it's to the point where they've convinced themselves that what they're doing in marketing, the activities they're driving, the campaigns that they're running, the tracking that they're generating to attribute sales, there's not even seemingly sometimes an expectation at all that this will have its insights showing up in the business results, that business results in and of themselves are being treated as sometimes immutable things that marketing can't affect. And this probably is very uncomfortable to hear, and you might be surprised that I would say this, especially given the fact that I'm trying to appeal to and be understood by marketers. But yeah, I would say this is a reflection that I don't think I've ever heard anyone explicitly tell me, but it's a feeling that I get. It's the feeling that lots of people in the industry have seen the cycle of more tracking, no more business results coming out the end game, and then doing those conversations internally to the point where they've convinced themselves that marketing doesn't move the business. When it's working great, when they're following all of the rules, when they're using all of the best practices they're being told to do, when they're understanding the data and they're collecting more of it, that you do all of that and you have to do all of that because smart people are telling you to do that, and very well-off and successful marketing technologies and tech companies and platforms and networks are saying that this is the best way to do it, so you must need to do more of it. But it never seems to show up at the business. And marketers, I think, have been trained to think that's somehow the business's fault. That's an issue with where they work. That's the issue with their company. That's the issue with their sales team or their operation team, or it couldn't be the fact that marketing isn't working, right? Because I'm following all the best practices and I look at all of this data I have on how it's affecting sales because I have all my attribution here and this thing's taking more attribution there. So that number keep going up. So it can't be marketing. It can't be the tech companies telling you to do all this stuff. It must be something else. And that's not true. The truth is that the pursuit of incremental ROI and incremental impact measurement is a valid one, but it's more than valid and it's more than noble and it's more than sophisticated. It's the only pursuit. Everything else that's not incremental is explicitly a waste. It's draining what's left of your company. It's not net neutral. It's not nice to have conversions that are not incremental. That's not good. You do not want to have conversions that you're investing towards that turn out to not be incremental, because that means you are explicitly wasting money. It's not, maybe it'll pay off down the road and we can talk again, go back and forth about the time series and the cycles and all this stuff, but it must move the business either today, tomorrow, or some point in the future. But if it does not make number go up, it is not real. It is a loss. You need to divest from things that drive conversions that don't show up at the top line of the business. Yeah, cheers. Thanks for listening to Branching Out. If you enjoy this content, like the video on YouTube or on your favorite podcast tool, subscribe to Bonsai's YouTube channel, and if you're on YouTube, click the bell notification to get an update when we release the next episode. Thanks so much.